Okay, I'm gonna walk you through how to make like a really high quality, what we called growing up in the Midwest, pasta sauce or meat sauce. You call it Bolognese, take your pick. But either way, this is a pretty good version and it's fairly elaborate, but it's worth the effort. The first step is dealing with the meat. What I have here is I have the components of what would be your sort of classic venison ground meat. If you process it yourself or take it to a processor, there's a very good chance you end up with something that's about 80% lean venison, elk, moose, or whatever, with around 20% pork fat or beef fat ground in. So that's this mix that's not been ground yet. You could do this dish just using this right here. So if you want to bring it up and have it be kind of a richer, fattier, more traditional bolognese, you're gonna wanna add in some pork. So we have some pork fat here and also just some boneless pork pieces here. The thing you run into in a situation like this, and I'm always sensitive to it, is at what point do you add so much like domestic meat that it sort of ceases to be a wild game dish? And it's always something I'm kind of like weighing out in my head. You're definitely pushing it here where you have, you know, almost more pork going into it than you have venison going into it. But to demonstrate this right now, I'm gonna do it with all the added pork, just like I said, just to really give it that more traditional, fatty, I don't wanna call it heavier, but just like a richer dish, knowing that you could very well go more lean venison and leave this stuff out. But I'm gonna combine this stuff all together, run it through the grinder, and the next step will be to jump over and start sauteing some vegetables and start, you know, actually building the sauce. First thing you want to do is just put in your onion and some oil and saute that 6 to 8 minutes. They'll start to get translucent. You'll be able to smell it really nice. Might start to crisp a little bit around the edges. Don't go much farther than that. Then put in carrots, put in celery pieces. Let that go a few more minutes, and we're going to add in the garlic. So I got the meat browning here, and I'm doing that in one pot. And I got the vegetables in another pot. You can do it all in just one container, right? One big pot and save on dishes, but I'm just doing it in two, a little bit for convenience sake. Now that the vegetables are softened, I'm gonna take tomato paste and make a little pocket in the middle of the vegetables and put that tomato paste down in that pocket. And then I'm just gonna let that heat up and sit on that bottom of the pan for a minute and kind of caramelize that tomato paste before I stir it in. As that tomato paste lays down there in the pan, you'll see it kind of like a little bit burns to the bottom. You just keep stirring it around. And eventually you want to stir it in with the vegetables to get it incorporated well. And you see how there's a lot of little stuff burnt to the bottom of the pan in there? So I'm going to take the wine, stir that wine in, get all that stuff worked up from the bottom of the pan. Work that around. So I'm gonna season that, and I'm gonna add this in to the meat. Now, before we put the milk in, just wanna reduce the heat to low, because this is gonna sit for quite a while. So reduce that heat to low, stir in the milk, and this is just gonna go for a while. Let it go for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours over low heat. You're gonna let this whole thing go for, you know, up to a couple hours, and you wanna watch it because sometimes it'll start getting pretty thick. If it does, you can add a little bit of water just to keep it so it's, you know, the right sort of sauciness, right? Another thing I do, just because I have young kids and they're cool about eating stuff, but I'm always trying to sneak, you know, kale and stuff past them, greens. So I'll oftentimes, once it gets cooking for a while, well before finish time, put in a bunch of diced up kale. And it winds up cooking in there so thoroughly that you don't even really notice it. And then once you add them in, get your water in there in order to keep it saucy. Put a lid on it, let it go for a while more. Okay, when you're ready to serve, one thing you want to do is make sure to grab the bay leaves and the thyme stem out of your pot. And then I've been adding a little bit of water to this sauce throughout the cooking process in order to keep it, you know, saucy so it doesn't just get turned into a brick in there. Just keep an eye on it, keep the lid on. It should look, you know, familiar. Then when it comes time to plating, we're gonna put a pan here, grab a little bit of the pasta water, serving in the sauce, heat that up. So here we're just Got the sauce hot, got a little bit of water. Bring that to heat and put the noodles in. We're just cooking it for a few minutes with the pasta in there, just to make sure everything's combined and they got a good coat on them. Feels like one unified dish. I'm gonna go from there. Onto a plate. Top with some Parmesan.
For this recipe and more, get the MeatEater Fish and Game Cookbook, available just about anywhere books are sold.